While I'm by no means a Feng Shui master, over the years I've gone from knowing absolutely nothing about Feng Shui to having it become a huge part of my life. In China, I'm what's known as a Yang Xi Fu, which translates to foreign daughter-in-law in Mandarin Chinese. And after over 15 years of marriage to my Chinese husband, and through immersing myself in the culture and language of China, I've picked up quite a few tips and tricks from books, stories, and by watching my in-laws over the years that inspired me to make this video. Hi there, friend, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Marissa, and this is A to Zen Life, where we talk about the A to Z of simplifying your way to a home and a life you love. And in today's video, we're chatting about how to achieve that through Feng Shui. If you've never heard of it before, Feng Shui is an ancient art that the Chinese people have been using for over 3,000 years to create balance and harmony in their living spaces. And through what you could call a thoughtful decluttering and organizing process, not only does Feng Shui teach you how to beautify your home, but it also helps you attract more positive energy, good luck, and prosperity into your life. So that's why in today's video, I'm sharing 8 simple rules of Feng Shui that you can use to create a home that's calm, tidy, and clutter-free. But before we dive into these tips and rules, I want to give a big thank you to Aura for being the awesome sponsor of today's video. Aura is honestly the perfect partner for this topic because anyone who knows about Feng Shui knows that it's not just about clearing physical clutter, it's also about clearing mental and emotional clutter. Aura is an award-winning app that's used by over 8 million people around the world, and it's a one-stop platform for all your mental wellness needs. As a minimalist, I love Aura because instead of needing to download 5 different apps, I can get everything that I need all in one place. And did you know that in Feng Shui, sound is a powerful tool for restoring balance and harmony through gentle sounds like flowing water and wind chimes? And I think this concept is especially important in hectic modern lives like ours, where we're constantly being bombarded with notifications and other things that clutter up our headspace. And that is what makes Aura the perfect tool to cut through the noise and replace it with calming, restorative sounds that invite peace back into our minds and homes. So if you're looking for ways to Feng Shui your life from the inside out, be sure and click the link in the description box below, and the first 500 people will get a free trial of the Aura app, plus an exclusive 25% off right now. And thanks again to Aura for sponsoring today's video. All right, moving on, one core principle of Feng Shui is to recognize that everything is energy. Thousands of years before Albert Einstein came up with the famous equation E equals mc squared, the Chinese were already harnessing the laws of energy, mass, and motion to shape the world around them through Feng Shui. In Chinese, the word Feng means wind and Shui means water. And just like wind and water, the energy in our homes also flows. And when that energy is blocked by things like clutter, broken items, and overcrowding, it creates stagnation, which can manifest as dark or negative feelings in mood, stress levels, and even in our physical health. Think of it this way: your home is like a riverbed. If the river's path is clear, the water flows easily and brings life along with it. But if it's jammed up with debris, everything slows down and the entire ecosystem of the river will suffer for it. So going back to Einstein, it's just simple math. Everything in your home is either helping the flow of energy or it's blocking it. And making this one simple shift in perspective will completely change the way that you think about your stuff and the spaces in your home. Next up, if you're struggling to decide where to start simplifying your home, Feng Shui has a simple answer, which is to begin with the big 3. And by big 3, what I'm talking about is the 3 most important rooms in your home. Now, not all sources agree on which rooms comprise these big 3, so the ones that I've chosen for this video include some of the most popular choices as well as my personal experience, and those rooms include your bedroom, your kitchen, and your entryway. Your bedroom is where you recharge, and if this space is cluttered, your rest will be restless. And we're going to touch on this topic a little bit more later in the video. And a good place to start is by starting small, clearing off your nightstands, folding the laundry that's piled on the chair, and keeping the things that surround your bed as calm and simple as possible. Next up, a lot of us consider the kitchen the heart of our home, and Feng Shui actually backs this up. Because in Feng Shui, it's directly tied to health and abundance, as it's where our food, aka our body's nourishment and fuel, comes from. I also think that the kitchen is one of the hardest places to Feng Shui in our homes because a lot of the rules that Feng Shui has for kitchens would involve major renovations to try to fix them. So things like not having the stove right across from the sink, because then the elements of fire and water clash, which is just a rule that I'm not able to follow in my home because that's the way that my kitchen is laid out. So instead, what I do and what I would recommend that you do as well is to focus on the things that you actually can control in your kitchen, such as keeping your countertops and cabinets free of visual clutter and getting rid of any broken appliances, tools, and plates, and doing things like keeping trash cans out of sight to avoid attracting negative energy into your kitchen. And then that brings us to the third space that I wanted to dive into more detail about with you, which is the entryway. And this is especially important because in Feng Shui, the entryway is what's known as the mouth of qi. And keeping your entryway clean and clutter-free is one of the very first rules of Feng Shui that I learned about from my Chinese in-laws. So knowing that the entryway to your home is called the mouth of qi, if you think about your entryway being cluttered, you can imagine it being like trying to breathe with a plastic bag over your head. You just can't get the flow that you need, and breathing will become harder and harder. And if you're looking for somewhere to get quick wins and instantly feel like you've gotten a breath of fresh air after you've decluttered, a good place to start is by clearing out anything that doesn't belong in your entryway, like old shoes that you never wear or that have gotten too worn out, stacks of junk mail and empty boxes, or random bags or accessories that have piled up near the doorway. It's important to make sure that your door can open easily and try to do your best to keep only the essentials that you need in that space, like a small bowl for keys, a place to hang your coats and store hats and gloves, and perhaps a shoe rack that keeps your shoes tidy and not overflowing, ideally one that's lower to the ground. This is a tip that I actually picked up from the Feng Shui expert behind the Dear Modern channel, so I'll be sure to link his video down below for you if you want to hear more about his tips for organizing the shoes in your entryway. Also, it's important to remember that the entryway is the first thing that you and your guests see when they come through the front door. So the entryway doesn't just set the tone for your home's energy, it also sets the tone for how you feel every time you walk in. So do your best to make sure the space is bright, welcoming, and free of clutter to create an immediate feeling of peace the moment that you or anyone else steps through that door. Another important Feng Shui rule is to remove broken or damaged items from your home. In Feng Shui, these objects carry negative energy because they represent stagnation or areas of life that aren't moving forward. In my childhood home, right in front of our front door, we used to have this ginormous grandfather clock that never worked as far as I could remember, and it always felt like that room had this heaviness and darkness lingering in it, even though it was really, really bright. And interestingly, later I found out that broken clocks are actually one of the worst things that you can have in your home in Feng Shui because it's a symbol of time standing still, which can make you feel stuck and lead to misfortune and bad luck. According to Feng Shui, cracked mirrors are also another thing that you definitely want to get rid of because not only do they distort your reflection, but they also reflect distorted energy back into your living spaces. And other things to declutter include things like appliances that no longer work, or furniture that's chipped, torn, or wobbly because they give off the message and vibe of things in your home being out of order. Even if you've had these things hanging around your home for so long that you think that you've stopped noticing them, what you need to keep in mind is that subconsciously, these items can subtly drain your energy every time you walk by them. And I think this is a common theme in a lot of cultures because it also reminds me of what Japanese minimalist Fumio Sasaki called the silent to-do list in his book, Goodbye Things. Now, the good news here is that the solution is simple. If something is broken and can be repaired, fix it as soon as possible so it can function properly again. But if it's beyond repair, it's better to thank it for its service and let it go. When you release these damaged items, you're symbolically telling yourself and your home that you're ready and worthy of fresh energy, good luck, and new opportunities to flow into your life. Another core principle of Feng Shui is to avoid overcrowding in all the spaces of your home, both big and small. Remember, Feng Shui is all about balance and movement, and just like wind and water, energy needs space to flow freely. And when a room or space is overcrowded, it can feel heavy, stagnant, and overwhelming. But on the other hand, when there's room for light and air and energy to move throughout your home, it immediately feels calmer and more spacious. And this rule applies to everything as big as the furniture in your living room, to micro zones as small as your linen closet or the clothes in your wardrobe. So if we look at this before and after photo from one of my friends who is a professional organizer, you can see that in the before photo, the closet was absolutely crammed with stuff. But then afterwards, there's such a feeling of lightness and spaciousness after she cleared out all that clutter and put things into nice, organized boxes. And while my friend did increase this sense of space with baskets and organizing tools, even just thinning out the amount of stuff still makes a huge difference. So looking at this next photo from another closet reorganization project, we can see how much just removing a lot of the stuff in that closet has contributed to a feeling of lightness and spaciousness. And going back to furniture, overly bulky or large furniture can make a space feel heavy or oppressive, so it's important to make sure that the furniture that you have in your spaces is the right size and scale for that room, as well as that you can easily walk through your space without needing to zigzag around obstacles. I actually covered this exact topic in last week's video about 10 common items that are a huge waste of space in a lot of people's homes. So I will be sure to link that video up here for you as well as down in the description box below in case you're interested in finding out more about that. But when it comes to your closet or dresser, it's always a good idea to declutter clothes that are the wrong size or that you don't wear so the rest of your wardrobe can breathe. And in micro zones like countertops or on shelving, aim for having some empty space between items instead of trying to fill up every square inch with things like collectibles and knickknacks. The goal here isn't to live in an empty house, but rather to create balance. By keeping things in your home at the right scale and leaving breathing room in your home, you'll be creating more breathing room in your life as well. Feng Shui rule number 6 is to hush your bedroom by decluttering things that cause restless energy. Our bedrooms are supposed to be the most restful and restorative rooms in our home, but in Feng Shui, it's often where people unintentionally invite in toxic or restless energy. I learned this the hard way 2 years ago when we moved into a temporary housing unit that was already furnished. And not only did it have way too many nightstands and dressers in the bedroom, but one of those dressers had a mirror on top of it that directly faced the bed, which is a huge no-no in Feng Shui. And even though I 100% knew this rule when we moved in, I told myself that it wasn't a big deal and it wasn't worth worrying about or fixing. And you know what happened? I started having nightmares every single night, a lot of which involved painful memories from childhood and losing my parents and my grandparents. But the moment I started hanging a blanket over the mirror before we went to bed, things immediately got better. So needless to say, that experience made me a believer. In Feng Shui, mirrors in the bedroom are believed to bounce around energy, which makes it harder to get rest. And TVs are another culprit of this, to the point where they're often called black mirrors in Feng Shui, because they're believed to be just as disruptive to sleep, with both the light and the energy they bounce around the room. Now, as is the case with most rules in Feng Shui, if you don't want to banish all of these items from your room completely, at the very least, the best thing that you can do is make sure that things like mirrors and TVs are not directly facing the bed, or if they are, to put them in something like a cabinet that you can close behind doors, or do something like paint the wall that the TV is hanging on a darker color, which will help camouflage it and not give the same restless energy when you're sleeping. And as a rule, it's also a good idea to keep the space below your bed completely clear of clutter so that energy can flow about you while you rest. By removing distracting items and keeping your bedroom simple, you'll set yourself up for deeper sleep and more nourishing rest. Next up, rule number 7 is to declutter things that are visually disturbing from your home. In Feng Shui, the colors, art, and decorations we surround ourselves with can either soothe us or make us feel unsettled. Talking about this reminds me of the first time that I went to a friend's house in Chicago, and I will never forget the shock that I got when she opened the door and I saw this horrific clown painting staring at me from across the hall. 10 years later, I don't even remember what the painting looked like or what the very funny and sweet story was behind that painting, but the thing that I do remember is how it made me feel, a mixture of creepiness and on edge feeling that followed me throughout the entire house while I was there. Even small things that we take for granted can create a sense of chaos and visual noise, such as a refrigerator covered in magnets, or too much wall art, or too many collectibles. Feng Shui teaches that our home should be a sanctuary for our eyes as well as for the rest of our bodies. So the fix is simple. Choose things that feel calm and supportive, and let go of anything that feels chaotic, heavy, or stressful. And finally, that brings us to the last Feng Shui rule that I wanted to share with you, which is that Feng Shui isn't about having a perfect home, it's about creating balance. No one's space is flawless, and honestly, it shouldn't be, because a home that's too sterile or minimal can feel just as uncomfortable as one that's overcrowded. And not everyone has the time, ability, or finances to replace all of our stuff or tackle major renovations. So instead of perfection, seek to create harmony, a balance between simplicity and personality. Your home should reflect you, your values, your character, and the life you're building. When you focus on flow and harmony rather than perfection, your home becomes a peaceful backdrop for the life you want to live. And if you're ready for more tips and ideas on how to declutter and organize your home, be sure and go check out one of these videos that YouTube thinks that you'll like, or I'll see you next week. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.